This is my 2000 BMW 328i, and today I'll show you how to replace the valve cover gasket. The valve cover gasket should be replaced as needed whenever it starts leaking, and for a lot of people on the BMW forums, that seems to happen right around every 60,000 miles. I've had to replace it before it was due a couple of times, so this will actually be my 5th time replacing the valve cover gasket on this engine since I bought the car about 17 years and 200,000 miles ago. It's actually a really easy job when you have the right tools, so let's get to it. Here are the tools that I used for this job. Impact driver, driver extension, T30 Torx bit, socket wrench, torque wrench, a few socket extensions, a universal socket joint, 8mm socket, 10mm socket, 10mm deep socket, 19mm socket, a tiny flathead screwdriver, and an air compressor. For this job I also needed a magnetic bowl, a plastic bowl, shop towels, a rag, gloves, safety glasses, earplugs, cotton swabs, rubbing alcohol, brake parts cleaner, a small amount of gasket maker, and a new valve cover gasket that includes grommets for all 15 bolts. There are links in the description for everything I used. I'll start by opening this wiring retainer and pulling all of the wires out of it. Remove the cabin air filter cover by twisting the 3 pins 90 degrees counterclockwise until they spring up. Remove the cabin air filter and set it aside. The cabin air filter housing is secured with 4 screws that can be removed with a T30 Torx bit. Gently pry out the 4 plastic caps on the engine covers. I like to keep track of which hole each one goes to because if you mix them up, you may find that some of them fit very tightly and some might even be loose enough to fall out. Each engine cover is secured with 2 10mm nuts or bolts. You'll also have to remove the oil cap before the lower engine cover can come out, but it's a good idea to replace the cap right away so nothing falls into the engine. You might have noticed we have some O2 sensors here where they shouldn't be. BMW calls these lambda sensors because they're actually a little different than O2 sensors. I don't want to explain it right now. But long story short, they're here because I installed catless headers a long time ago, and when I put these back where they should be, post-cats, it gave me a check engine light on the dash, and the easiest solution I found was to just take them out and hang them here. And the car's been running fine since then, so I just never got around to flashing the ECU to delete these basically, which is something that I should do and I could make a video about it, so leave a comment if you want to see that. To be perfectly honest with you, I am out of zip ties, so I'm not going to cut these today, but I'm going to disconnect the battery cable and the wires that go to the coil packs, and then I'll move everything out of the way to make it easy to get to the valve cover gasket. First, we have to disconnect all the coil packs, unbolt them. Each one has 2 10mm bolts. We'll need to remove this small orange wire, and then this whole wiring harness for the coil packs will unclip from the valve cover, and we can move it out of the way. We'll also need to disconnect this hose, which is pretty easy to get to, so I'll just start with that. You'll need to squeeze the top and the bottom on this, and then pull it off. You can kind of twist it to break it free here, but don't break the plastic. For each one of these, you just pull the metal part up and then pull the connection out. It's pretty easy to do by hand. If it hasn't been done in a long time, you might need a screwdriver to pry those up. And then if you have a car, I think 2002 and newer, this will be a different style. We'll have a lever that you swing up, and you don't want to swing it all the way because then the wire can get stuck. You want to swing it about 3/4 of the way and then pull the cable out. Your car might have a second one of these orange wires over here. If it does, you'll need to disconnect both of them. These are 8mm nuts. Aren't they? Each coil is secured with 2 of these bolts, and each bolt has a washer that won't come off, so you don't have to worry about that. But there are ground straps on the first and last bolt that you need to make sure you reconnect when we put everything back together. Now I'm going to pull out all the coil packs and lay them on my bench in order. You can see that I've previously marked all these for what number cylinder they go into, 1 through 6. And like I've said in other videos, I'm not exactly sure what the reason is that you want to keep these in the same order. So if you know the reason, please leave a comment and let us all know. Now I'm having a little trouble with this nut here. I thought it was supposed to be an 8mm from what I read online. This is a 9mm socket. It almost fits on it. The 10mm socket is too big for sure, and none of my standard sizes fit it. So I don't know what the problem is. Maybe I lost this nut once and replaced it with one that worked, but now I can't find anything that fits it except for maybe a 9mm. I got a 9mm wrench on it, but this socket doesn't fit quite right. I'm gonna try to gently hammer this socket into place and see if that doesn't do the trick. There we go. I knew it was 9mm. This is crazy. I'm just going to use the wrench to get it the rest of the way off. This is really tough to remove. Like it's cross-threaded, or it's probably just the wrong threads, which kind of reconfirms my initial hypothesis that I lost the right nut for this. The correct nut, not the right nut, and I replaced it with the wrong nut, and I don't think I should have done that. In any case, I don't think I have the correct nut on hand, but I'll have a look once I get this thing off, or when we put it back together, I guess, and I'll see if I have anything better than I did the last time I did this. Does the box end work? The box end does work. Maybe I just have a crappy 3/8 socket. I don't know. This is really annoying though, I'll tell you that much. And I'm kind of worried that it might not go back together. This is not a good thing that's happening right now. Not a good thing at all. But hey, we got it off. Here's the easy way to disconnect this wiring harness from the valve cover. The first clip is right here on the bottom, so grab this end and pull up. And then the next clip is on the top, so pull down and out. And the next one's on the bottom, so up and so forth. Just up and down until it comes off. Now I can remove this power cable, which is secured with a 19mm nut, but be careful not to touch this and any part of the chassis at the same time with your wrench, because this is a live wire and you'll create a short circuit if you do that. The power is not in the wire, the power is in the stud. So don't be afraid of short-circuiting this to the frame. That's not going to happen. But make sure not to contact this with anything that it shouldn't. Just close that to be safe. I'll just use a bungee cord to kind of pull everything out of the way a little bit further. I almost forgot, we also have to remove this hose that goes around the edge of the valve cover. It connects right here. I think that's called the EGR. And anything else that is inside of these clips here, you'll need to disconnect and pull out of there because that is connected to the valve cover. It would probably be even easier to pull the hose off of this and get it completely out of the way. But I can tell right now, if I pull that thing off, it is gonna shred. I'm not getting it back on, and I don't have a replacement. So we're just gonna be really careful with it and work around it. There. There's some wires here too that I just noticed. They're only connected to the back side of it, it looks like, and they go straight down. Those are my O2 sensors. Okay, I think I'll figure out a way to hold this up just so I don't forget about it. I'll just use another bungee cord and very lightly pull it up and over. There, I don't even have any tension on it. It's just so it's kind of out of the way for when I pull everything off. Before I go any further, I'm going to grab my air compressor hose and blow off the whole thing to minimize the risk of debris falling into the engine when I remove the valve cover. Don't forget your safety glasses and your hearing protection. Now I'm ready to start unbolting the valve cover. There's going to be 11 bolts like this one around the outside edge. You'll need a 10mm socket for all of those. And then on the inside, there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 to remove. But for the end ones, you'll need to remove the ground straps first, which are secured with 8mm bolts. Then once those are off, you can remove all 4 with a deep 10mm socket. I guess that part's a little more complicated, so I'll start with that first. That's what one of the center ones looks like. The threads at the bottom are on the inside. And there's a little bit of oil on there, so that one might have been leaking. Not as much space back here. So I dropped my extension. That one's getting a little rounded off. I don't know why. Yeah, that one, I don't know. I'll get a wrench. Well, that's no good. Let's try Mr. Hammer again and see if I can get it on there a little bit better. I do not like having to do this. that did not work. Here's my last resort, vice grips. I don't like to use these, but I don't want this to get any worse. And I don't know what else to do, honestly. So we're just gonna try to get this off before I completely ruin it, and then I can replace it at some point. Oh man, that's on there good. I'll try to get it as tight as I can. Oh, it's not gonna work, is it? What if I try something crazy like sticking a screwdriver in here for leverage? Oh, now I'm hitting the valve cover with that, so that's not even gonna turn. Shoot, what can I do? Here's a closer look at what I'm dealing with here. That guy is rounding out. 10mm socket slips right off of it. So does the wrench. So do the vice grips. It seems especially tight. Maybe that's why it got stripped in the first place. It might be rusty under there or corroded or whatever. So I'm going to take a break and brainstorm. All right, I didn't find a non-destructive way to get this bolt off. So what I've decided to do is order a whole new set of bolts. They are $4.09 a piece, but they will come with new rubber washers, which I just bought a set of, and new metal washers, which is probably good because these look pretty corroded. But then I'll be able to do some modification to this bolt and try to get it out. I just don't want it to turn into a big ordeal right now when I have to use the car tomorrow and I don't have any extra bolts. So we'll just wait for a new set to come in. I also looked into getting a new set of these. There's 4 of them, but these are $15 a piece or so, and that's not happening today. We didn't have any problems with those ones anyway. Anyway, when the new set of bolts comes in, I'll pick up where I left off here. To you, that should take about 5 seconds, but for me, it might be a couple weeks. When I was putting these ground straps back on, I realized that the nuts that hold them on are the same as the one that I need for that ground wire for this wiring harness. So anyway, I saw these ones on Real OEM, so I'll just order one of those. I was looking for this specific one, but they're all the same. I ended up ordering a set of stainless steel cap nuts, which seems like a nice little upgrade from the factory hardware. And they also came with stainless washers and a set of rubber grommets. And here's the tiny nut I ordered for that ground wire. All that put me just a couple dollars away from getting free shipping, so I also ordered this tire brush. All right, I got everything back to where it was, where I left off, and the first thing I'm going to try on this is my biggest set of vice grips. Last time I tried my medium set, and I think these will get a better bite on the bolt. We'll just have to give it a shot and see what happens. If that doesn't work, I think I might use my Dremel tool to cut a slot across the top of this so I can stick a big flathead screwdriver in it and turn it by hand. I've tried getting smaller sockets onto there. It's supposed to be a 10mm, but nothing else really fits, so we'll just take it one step at a time, I guess. I think it might have turned a little bit. Yeah, okay. We got it loose. I broke off a tiny piece of plastic here that was part of this little fin. It's not a big deal, obviously, but you want to be careful not to break the actual valve cover. Now we'll go ahead and remove the rest of the bolts around the edge of the valve cover, and hopefully we don't run into any more problems like that. Make sure to remove all of the old washers and grommets as you go. I needed a universal socket joint with a 9-inch extension to reach the 2 bolts in the back. Now you should be able to remove the valve cover. It's probably going to feel like it's stuck to the motor, so just take your time and be careful because the whole thing's made of plastic. Well, I've never seen that happen before. The gasket separated from the valve cover as I was pulling it off. This is actually still really pliable. I'm surprised. Every time I take these off, they're really brittle and they crumble. It says BMW. I don't know if that means that it's the OEM gasket. I'll have to look up what one I bought last time, but I would say this one's in surprisingly good shape, but it did still start leaking, so I guess it didn't really matter. Don't forget to pull out these guys. These are also really pliable. Now, from what I can tell, this was leaking in a lot of spots all around the edge. I think probably around these half moons, it was leaking the most. All along that bottom edge, you can see oil. Well, that doesn't mean that it was coming all the way through, I guess, but we'll have a closer look at the gasket in a minute, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. And up here, I just wanted to point out that there's a line of dirt right there that I really don't want to knock into the motor, so just make sure to clean the surface, clean the mating surface really well, and be careful not to knock anything like that into the motor. So here's Exhibit B. Maybe it's not going to be super easy to show you, but you can kind of see where the oil was making its way around the gasket. There are some really wet spots. A lot of it's dry. I don't think it was leaking through here necessarily where it's dry, higher up on the wall. This is the top edge. Looks like it was coming through there. That would be the back top edge. And then here's the back corner. And then these half moons on the back. They're all wet, so they were probably leaking. And then here's the front bottom edge. It's a pretty wet spot. And then back to the front half moons. So the thing with these half moons on the front is that you're supposed to put a dab of RTV sealant on each corner of each half moon, and I never do it. Mainly because I hate cleaning it out of there, and partially because I've never noticed it leaking very much from there, maybe a little bit. Like now, it wasn't leaking that much. It was leaking enough that I could smell it. Probably it was dripping onto the exhaust headers down here, but it's got to be changed every 60,000 miles anyway, because it's just not going to last longer than that. So it's up to you. I think this time I probably will put some RTV sealant on here because I have some on hand, so why not? I just hate cleaning that stuff up. You also might have noticed the dark burnt oil up here on the front of the DISA. That is from doing too long of oil changes. change your oil more often, and this will clean up and look more like this bronze gold color. It's been like this before, and it's come clean before, and every time I open up the valve cover, it looks differently. So if you see some black stuff in here, it doesn't mean anything's wrong. It just means you need to change your oil more often. I'm actually not sure how long it's been since I changed the oil in this engine because I just don't drive it very much anymore. I'll go look it up and put it on the screen. Now I've got some rubbing alcohol and some cotton swabs, and I'm going to use those to clean out the grooves where the gaskets go. There's some oil pooled up in this low area, so I'm going to use a shop towel to wipe it out. Don't forget these inner ones. Ain't no mechanic can do a better job than that. You got to make sure that this extra tab fits over the hole on the far end of each gasket. I couldn't get down in these grooves with the cotton swab, so I used a tiny flathead screwdriver, folded a shop towel once, and then wrapped it around the screwdriver, and that worked really well to clean those out. This really wasn't too dirty. I'm going to wipe it down one last time with some brake parts cleaner, and that should pick up anything that I missed. Whew, that went everywhere. This is my RTV sealant of choice, The Right Stuff by Permatex. You can make an entire gasket out of this if you want to, and I've had to do that on my Jeep a few times. The directions on this say surfaces should be clean and dry, assemble parts immediately while silicone is still wet, finger tighten until material begins to squeeze out around the flange, let dry for 1 hour, then tighten to Torx specifications. After that, allow 90 minutes before refilling with fluids or returning to service, and replace the cap after use. So I'm just going to do a little dab in each corner here, not too much. Because I hate cleaning this stuff up. By the way, this stuff is really sticky, so try not to get it on your skin. I put a little more on here than I needed. I'll just use my finger to kind of make some adjustments here. All right, let me show you a close-up of what I did. Just a small dab in each corner. Should be plenty. If you put this stuff back on the shelf after using it, the whole tube's going to dry out. So what I do is I get a long nail, I take off this nozzle and clean out the inside of it, and then I stick the nail inside the tube all the way so it seals the tip. Then, the next time you open it, you're going to be left with a hollow piece of RTV sealant that conformed to the inside of the nozzle that's really easy to just rip off. And then under here, you've got the nail. Just pull the nail out and you're good to go. You might have to scrape out some dried material at the opening, but the rest of the tube should still be good. Be careful and make sure not to bump the gasket out of place while you're putting this back on. And also, make sure you don't pinch any of these wires back here. They shall all go around the outside of the valve cover, not underneath it. Okay, so that seems like it's in the right spot. Just take a look around the edge all the way around, well, as much as you can, and make sure that there aren't any gaps. Now we can reinstall the bolts finger tight. And by the way, I was going to mention, I was going to keep these old ones just to have some extras on hand, but these don't look like they're in good shape at all. They all pretty much look like this, getting rusty, and after stripping that one, I'm afraid I'm going to strip another one, so I'm glad to have the new set. I gotta say, this stainless steel hardware that I got from FCP Euro is super nice. This is like the nicest hardware I've ever bought. It's just shiny and, I don't know, it has this quality to it that is just impressive. And the grommets that came with these say Germany on them, whereas the grommets that came with the valve cover gasket do not. So I'm using these ones that came with the bolts, and these grommets, they fit this way so that that funny ridge is it's going to face down into the motor, flat side up. The service manual doesn't say anything about what the pattern should be for reinstalling these, so I'm just doing a crisscross pattern to even out the load as much as I can. This is the bad one that was in the second spot here. That had that funky nut that was the wrong it was the wrong one. I ordered the right one, but these threads are kind of messed up. So I'm going to move this one over one where it doesn't have a nut on top of it. And then I'll put a different one in this spot. Now there are another set of washers and grommets underneath those 4 cap nuts I'm about to install. I almost forgot about these, but the valve cover gasket kit does come with enough grommets to replace those 4 in the middle too. So just don't forget. Metal washer first, then the grommet. Just like that. Now I'll just set an alarm for 1 hour, and then I can come back and torque all these bolts to spec. All right, it's been an hour. We can torque these to 89 inch-pounds or 10 Newton meters. And don't forget to tighten them in a star pattern. You can go over these one more time, but it won't do anything because when we tightened them, they all bottomed out, and then the torque wrench just kind of made sure that it was bottomed out. These aren't going to get any tighter. With everything torqued down, we can drive the car again in 90 minutes after the RTV sealant is firmed up, but we gotta put everything back together first anyway. Before we reinstall the CCV hose or the CVV, whatever you prefer, it's the crankcase ventilation valve, so it's technically CVV. Anyway, before we reinstall this, I wanted to show you how dirty mine is. Let's see if I can get a light in there. I replaced this entire system a few years ago, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago now. But anyway, this is pretty typical. All that gunk in there is from driving short distances. The only cure for this really is to drive long distances. If all your trips in this car were 45 minutes or more, this probably wouldn't happen. But that's not my life anymore. I do a lot of 10 to 20 minute trips in this car now, and so it's gonna get gunked up. I think I'll start driving it more and see if that makes a difference. Remember, these braided grounds connect to the first and last center studs that we installed. The angled connector connects to the stud, and the straight connector connects to the coil pack. I did not find a Torx spec for these ones, so I'm just gonna do it by feel. Not too tight, these are really tiny nuts. That's not going anywhere, should be fine. Remember to put these back in order. I have mine numbered in case I didn't mention that earlier. And I don't know why they need to be put back in order in case I didn't mention that earlier. It's just something I read a long time ago. Maybe it's not even true. Leave a comment if you know. I like getting input from electrical engineers when I can. See, the braided cable just connects to the top through the bolts that we're installing right now. I didn't find a Torx spec for those either, but they really don't need to be too tight.
By the way, you can now support the channel by purchasing this awesome design available in a t-shirt, long sleeve, and a hoodie, and in a bunch of different colors as well. Check for a link in the description below.
Don't forget to reconnect your tiny little wire here. That's what I ordered that new nut for, so I'll go grab it. Here we go. One new tiny nut. Make sure not to drop it. Now we can reconnect this. To reconnect the ignition coils, lift up on the metal clip, plug in the plastic plug, and then press down on the metal clip to lock it in place. That one's stripped out, so we don't need a wrench to tighten it up, I guess. That one I'll just tighten by hand because I don't want to strip it out. These really don't need to be tight anyway. I like to put these plastic clips back in the same spot that they came out of. I probably should have told you that earlier, but they seem to fit kind of funny if you don't do that. Some will be a little loose, like that one was kind of loose because last time I did this I didn't do it right. And some of them can be really tight, like that one was really tight. I should probably swap these two out. I'm going to swap them out because I'm a perfectionist. Where's my screwdriver? And those both feel really good now. So the thing is that I've lost these before. I've had them fall out because they were too loose, and then I had to buy replacements. And they're not expensive, but someday they're going to stop making replacements. So I don't want to lose any more of these because I might not be able to replace them someday. Does that make sense? Make sure all your rubber seals are laying the way that they should be. I have that on the lowest setting, by the way. It's not going to strip anything out. The cabin air filter is supposed to only fit one way. The tabs on the side should be on the bottom.
Push the wires back into the wiring retainer with the power cable behind the coil pack wiring.
Seriously though, look at this hardware I got. It's like shiny and it's got rainbows coming off of it. Very nice.
Remember to wait 90 minutes for the gasket maker to dry before starting the engine, but other than that, we're done. I'm already working on a couple more BMW videos right now, so stay tuned for those coming soon. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe for more of the best DIY videos on the internet. And until next time, just keep throwing money at it.